Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the show, and thank you so much for watching Smart 24 TV, where we drive your business. My name is Anthony and I am your host. You're watching the coolest show on the coolest TV in East Africa, Smart 24 TV. And of course, this is Financial Markets, where we get to analyze some of the market performances, mainly from the stock markets, but also getting to inform you of any updates in the global and regional financial markets, that is the treasury bond market and the stock market news as well. My name is Anthony, and I'm very glad you're joining us today. GOTV East Africa, your number one private stock exchange, is the proud sponsor of the program. You can follow GOTV at GOTV East Africa on Twitter, but you can learn more about the products there at www.gotveastafrica.com. GOTV, under their Zabu initiative, are bringing the treasury bond market in your sitting room. You can now be able to transfer money off of your mobile phone onto the GOTV East Africa Stock Exchange, and you buy yourself some of the latest and the biggest treasury bonds in East Africa. We are talking about treasury bonds in Kenya, in Uganda and Tanzania as well. You simply have to dial *292# and register. Following the prompts, you can be able to register using your national identification card number, and the rest is history. GOTV East Africa, we say you can do something new, and you can start your journey of investment with GOTV East Africa there. Now, the markets open at 15 minutes past 8, remember, and close at 15 past 3 p.m. That is East African Standard Time. That is at GOTV Market. So you can always check them out during the trading hours. They will be very, very helpful. I'm glad you're joining us today, and I'm very excited, of course, to present to you some of the latest stock market news, stock market information. Did you know yesterday, actually, there was an announcement by Microsoft that it will be cutting over 100,000 jobs. That is further from 1,000 jobs that were cut last year. Tech stocks continue to cut jobs, and also they continue to depreciate on the US stock exchange. That and more is what's coming up on the show. But let's get to first start with the Uganda Securities Exchange and have a look at the day's trading as per yesterday's data. Now, there were about 5 companies that did trade on the Uganda Securities Exchange as per the tradings here, and the day ended with 2 gainers and 6 losers on the market. The 2 gainers were mainly Equity Bank Limited and East African Breweries Limited, who gained by 0.61% and about 0.11% respectively on the exchange. And the Equity Bank Limited stock grew to 1,379.28 Ugandan shillings, while the East African Breweries Limited stock grew to 5,111.18 Ugandan shillings. Now remember, the Equity Bank Limited stock is actually the biggest stock via market capitalization on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Currently, they have about 5.11 trillion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization on the exchange. This represents close to a quarter of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange equities market. Equity bank tradings haven't been that promising on the market so far. 2022 they traded almost nothing, and 2023 starts on a bad note as well, with no trades so far registered on the company here at the Uganda Securities Exchange. However, still, just for your own information, yesterday they did appreciate by 8.37 shillings up to 1,379.28 Ugandan shillings. And currently they have close to 3.7 billion shares floated on the exchange, valued at 5.11 trillion Ugandan shillings. That is, of course, the Equity Bank Limited stock there for you. East African Breweries Limited, quite similar story here. They did gain about 5.62 Ugandan shillings on their stock price, up to 5,111 Ugandan shillings, which was a 0.11% gain. Just a few days ago, they had the biggest sharp rise to over 7,000 and then coming back down to 5,000 recently as well. Remember, most of these movements really are not due to the companies being, of course, very active on the stock market, but rather because they are cross listings. We do have factors like the foreign exchange coming in there. So you can look at the strength of the Ugandan shilling against the Kenyan shilling, and all that can factor in these differences as well. Primary stock exchange market activity or trading does impact the trading of these stocks on the secondary market, which is now, of course, looking at the Uganda Stock Exchange side. And that currently is what is influencing some of these movements, but no trade has been registered on East African Breweries Limited since the year began 2023. However, they do have notably about 791 million shares that are floating on the exchange, valued at a 4.04 trillion market capitalization, and that makes them the second most valuable behind the Equity Bank Limited stock. So those are the two biggest gainers for the day. But on the losing side, we had quite a number of them, about 6 listed stocks, mainly cross listings with only one domestic listing, and that was DFCU Bank, who lost about 0.18% for the day. But most of these other losers actually were cross listings. Looking at, for example, Centum losing about 3.03% of the day's trading, and down to 247.11 shillings. And the Jubilee Holdings Limited stock lost close to over 2.72% of its value, down to 5,777.85 Ugandan shillings. Nation Media Group as well lost over 2.34%, down to 463.71 shillings. And when you look at KCB Group, they lost over 1.11%, down to 1,146.68 shillings. And Kenya Airways lost over 113.48 shillings, rather lost 0.47% to 113.48 Ugandan shillings on the stock exchange. DFCU Bank disappointingly as well joined the losers after market participation, which is for the first time this year. I think that is for DFCU Bank. It hasn't, I think, yes, it definitely is the first time DFCU is coming in the participants list here on the Uganda Securities Exchange. But unfortunately, or fortunately, this has come with a loss of 0.18%. But let's get to look at details here on the DFCU stock and get to, of course, see what the company's stock has been like in the last couple of days. Well, the company currently is amongst the top 10 companies in value, coming in the 9th position in particular via market capitalization, with a total of just 405 billion Ugandan shillings market capitalization. Yesterday, the company lost 1 shilling on their stock price and closed at exactly 542.00 Ugandan shillings per share, which was a 0.18% that was actually shed off the trading price on this particular company. Currently, there are trading volumes as high as about 2,133. That was the last day they traded, and this was valued at 1.16 million Ugandan shillings. Regarding, of course, the performance of this company in the last few days and months, it hasn't been a smooth journey for DFCU Bank. Looking at, for example, their 1 month performance just in the last 4 weeks, they have lost a value of over 0.18%, and in the last 3 months they have lost further about 0.55% of their value on the Uganda Securities Exchange. And when you look at also the last in the last 3 months, they are currently the 9th most traded on stock in the last quarter. From the 17th of October to the 17th of January, they have traded a record 5,700 436 shares. These are valued at close to 3.11 million Ugandan shillings, which is a quite mediocre performance. But that is, of course, looking at the average of the Uganda Securities Exchange. They do have a little bit of impact, I have to say, but we need more from DFCU Bank. DFCU was quite pretty much affected by last year's non-issuance of dividends. The company wasn't able to issue dividends, of course, during COVID-19 period, that is 2020 and in 2021. So, of course, as per other financial institutions, for example, Bank of Baroda Uganda and DFCU, rather Stanbic Bank Uganda, they were able to make up for that, at least with Stanbic issuing over about 100 billion for their dividends for 2020-2021, 50 billion, and then Bank of Baroda, yes, Bank of Baroda was able to also give out at least 25 billion worth of dividends. DFCU, unfortunately, was unable to meet that target, and that definitely did a lot more harm than good for the company's stock performance on the Uganda Securities Exchange. But we hope for better this year. Financial institutions seem to be redeeming themselves, especially in as far as the economic performance is concerned. The private sector, of course, we are not doing away with the financial problems. We still have inflation around and a lot more problems to deal with. But at least the COVID-19 pandemic, Ebola has started going out of the picture. And so we are seeing a little bit more participation in the economy by the private sector. Of course, this will call for borrowing and, of course, lending money. And so that's the way banks will probably make money this year. And we hope definitely the results for the financial statements give a better picture to their shareholders this year, and are able to issue a dividend as well. Now, MTN Uganda recorded the biggest volume for the day with over 1,436,827 shares that were traded on the exchange on this particular day of trading. MTN Uganda currently is the third most valuable, coming behind Equity Bank and as well as East African Breweries Limited. In value, the company has 4.03 trillion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization, representing close to 19.3% of the 21 trillion market capitalization of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, MTN, of course, there's a lot of expectations this year. Shareholders are looking forward to a lot of stuff from MTN Uganda. Since its listing last year, but in 2021, there hasn't been a recovery for the initial public offer. Remember, the company was also undersubscribed during its initial public offer. So all that has to be made up for. And in much as, of course, we still have the price at 180 shillings and not going below that in the last couple of days, there is still more demand for value addition there for the shareholders, because, of course, the very first people that bought shares at MTN were buying them at 200 shillings. And we're waiting for that day when probably we can go back to that price. But in as far as trading is concerned, the company is, of course, trying as much as it can in participation, coming in the third place in the last quarter in terms of trading. They have recorded about 22.5 million shares in this period, with a value of over 4.07 billion Ugandan shillings turnover on the market. The company also has a volume high of 9.89 million shares that was achieved on the 3rd of January this year. So we have a lot of expectations at MTN this year, and we are starting in full gear. And I hope this energy will actually be sustainable, at least throughout the first quarter, and get to see what, of course, happens ahead of the closure of the financial year. Now, in summary, of course, as well, Stanbic Bank Uganda participated in the trades with the 35,200 shares volume and closing, fortunately or unfortunately, at 21.0 Ugandan shillings, which is a stagnant pricing there. No change in price was witnessed. And Uganda Plays as well returned with an activity of over about 12,297 shares, and recording their last price at 15.0 Ugandan shillings per share. Umeme did miss out, of course, on the day's trading with over 2,600 shares and closing the day with a price of 300.0 Ugandan shillings. In summary, the volume was actually indicating a 590% improvement. So MTN did have a great influence on that one there. And this was a total volume of over 1.48 million shares that was achieved on the Uganda Securities Exchange. And the market capitalization also went up slightly at 21 trillion Ugandan shillings. Getting across to Nairobi Stock Exchange. This is the biggest stock exchange in East Africa and one of the most active stocks in the entire Africa, coming in the top 10 listing or rankings for the different stock exchanges in Africa. Now, the exchange recently has also been witnessing a little bit of a decline in the volumes, decline in the number of trading, but at least via participation in the trading, we had over 51 companies participating in trading, which is of course a little bit higher than Tuesday tradings. According to the Nairobi Securities Exchange, we had 14 gainers and about 25 losers. Guess what? This time Kakuzi led the top gainers with a 9.02% gain in price, appreciating to over 420.0 Kenyan shillings per share. He was followed by Uchumi Supermarket, who appreciated by 4.55%, and the TPS East African Serena at 3.75%. And of course, Nairobi Business Ventures as well come in at a 3.57% gain. On the losing side, BOC Kenya lost most on the day after losing over 9.72% down to 65 Kenyan shillings per share. And Home Africa as well lost over 8.57% of its value. Longhorn Publishers lost of about 7.36%, and Sanlam Kenya about 5.68%. BOC Kenya, let's get to look at some of their stock, because last year BOC Kenya was one of those companies that actually did perform well there. BOC Kenya is a Kenya-based company primarily engaged in chemical industry. That is for a point of information there. And currently they are the 39th most valuable on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and their value goes up to as high as 1.27 billion Kenyan shillings, which represents about close to 0.068% of the entire Nairobi Securities Exchange equities market. Just as by yesterday, they lost 7 shillings and down to 65.0, did indicate about 9.72% loss on their stock price. They had over 6,500 shillings turnover for the day and about a total of 100 shares that were recorded for the day. When you look at their last performance here, losing 9.72% is not just a daily loss, but the 1 week loss as well. And in 4 weeks, they have lost close to about 7.14%. 3 months, about 15.6%. So still losing is still something we have to cope with at BOC Kenya. Now, they last closed also Wednesday at about 65.0 Ugandan Kenyan shillings on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Away from BOC Kenya, currently the biggest mover on the market on the Kenyan Nairobi Stock Exchange is Safaricom. Safaricom did return very strongly on Wednesday with over 57.1 million shares that were traded, and it was followed by Equity Group Holdings with over 3.57 million shares, and Cooperative Bank of Kenya at close to 1.32 million shares, and East African Breweries Limited at 400,900 shares. Regarding the performance of the NSE market indices, the NSE All Share Index lost a little bit at 1.3 points, down to about 119.37 points. And currently, we are lacking on the 1 week performance about 4.54% that has been lost, and a 4-week loss of 7.1% on this particular index. The other indices, the NSE20 and NSE25 as well lost, with NSE20 losing 0.57% and the NSE25 losing about 0.76%. Well, because of the big volumes at Safaricom, there was an improvement in the volumes at the Nairobi Stock Exchange generally at about 377% improvement, comparing of course with the last day of trading, that is on Tuesday. And the total volume, rather the turnover at 1.4 billion Kenyan shillings. It's also one of the biggest we've seen so far on the market since the year began. That was a 734% improvement. So very significant moves there by the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Now, elsewhere in Africa, getting to look into the Ghana stock. Ghana lost 1.31 points on their benchmark index. Now, this was after a day that saw 11 Ghana Stock Exchange listings participating in trading, ending the day with only one single gainer, and that was Benso Oil Palm Plantation with a 4.58% gain, and just two losers, that is Unilever Ghana as well as Ghana Oil Company. MTN Ghana still recorded the biggest volume on the Ghana Stock Exchange with over 49,199 shares that were traded. Ghana is currently suffering from debt problems, especially the government, and is currently defaulting on several loans. So the Ghanaian economy as well, just like many economies in Africa, is still struggling there as well. And so it's evident from their current performances as well on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Ghana Stock Exchange is one of still the growing stock exchanges in Africa, with a total of about 64.6 billion there on their stock exchange. Away from Ghana, Johannesburg, the biggest stock exchange in Africa, moved upwards via their all share index data here. Now, after a day where they witnessed over 331 Johannesburg Stock Exchange listings participate in trading, they ended with over 161 gainers and 141 losers. Owando led the gainers with over 26.32% gain to a tune of 0.24 South African Rand. And on the losing side, however, we had REIT Pop at exactly about 31.67% loss, which was the biggest loss for the day. Regarding the benchmark index, currently they're counting over 79,865.48 points after gaining about 480 points there on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to cross over to the US stocks here. Remember to diversify your portfolio is always to your own advantage. And if you want to be risk, you have to kind of avoid the risk when it comes to investing in stock markets, in the treasury bond market. Diversify. That is the only way you're going to overcome some challenges that is regarding the risk of losing your money in all these investments. So you can diversify your portfolio by investing in different equities in different regions. You can invest in different asset classes, a little bit in the stocks, a little bit into the treasury bonds. That way you will go a long way in trying to overcome the problem of course, losses on the current, markets that are, of course, facing lots and lots of financial problems. Now, the U.S. stock markets fell early Wednesday morning, and today, of course, they have opened on a positive note, but still, we are still watching very closely what the market is going to look like today. Now, the U.S. stocks stand lower as Wall Street continued to pass through corporate financial updates for signs of the earnings recession many analysts have warned about. Investors also assessed the government's monthly retail sales report which reflected a little bit of a slowdown in the consumer spending activity, along with a cooler than expected inflation reading. The S&P 500, or the Standards & Poor's, lost over 0.4%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average shed off over close to 250 points, which is about 0.7%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq also was off by 0.2%. But also, when you look at the tech stocks, news coming in from, of course, the tech stocks here at the US Wall Street, we're seeing that Microsoft will be cutting jobs further. Of course, Microsoft last year was able to cut quite a number of jobs there, but they're going to cut more jobs, according to, of course, what Microsoft announced on Wednesday. Now, Microsoft said they will be laying off over close to 10,000 workers as part of an effort to cut costs at the tech behemoth. The layoffs impact roughly over 4.5% of the Microsoft's 221,000 workforce. Now, the cuts are expected to be completed by Microsoft's fiscal third quarter, which ends on the 31st of March 2023. Now, Microsoft says that the layoffs will result in a total of $1.2 billion charge, representing 0.12 US dollar losses per share. Of course, whenever these cutoffs come, it's of course the shareholders who suffer, because these people have to be compensated, and there's a charge, of course, there for, of course, laying off staff. The Redmond-based company previously announced layoffs in October, and shedding off as many as over 1,000 jobs, according to Axios. In July, Microsoft also laid off approximately 1% of its workforce, and of course, we're seeing more and more of these coming in, especially in the tech stocks. Thank you so much for watching Smart24 TV and for staying tuned. More programming coming your way. My name is Anthony. You can watch, of course, every morning as we update you on what's happening in the global financial markets. More programming ahead. Stay with us. I'll catch you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye for now.